Morgan requests me on Patreon to review the 70s Disney movie The Cat from Outer Space. I've discussed Disney's 70s period a few times before, most notably my video about Ron Miller, and how it was a low point for the studio as it struggled following Walt Disney's death and stayed rather stagnant during that decade. And the main thing they seemed to produce during this period were animal movies. If someone had a script in the 70s involving an animal getting into hijinks, there's a good chance it wound up in Disney's hands. The Cat from Outer Space is definitely a product of this era, although I would consider it a more middle-of-the-road entry, and it has its moments. The best parts are early on when we get introduced to the movie's concept. This is very much a movie that promises what it advertises. The movie centers on an alien who looks like a cat and lands on Earth, where he befriends a human. I'm pretty sure everyone who paid for a ticket to see The Cat from Outer Space expected to see that, and there is a bit of humor early on, as the military and a couple of scientists try to figure out the spaceship, and one human encounters the cat. One aspect that is particularly amusing for MASH fans like myself is the presence of both McLean Stevenson and Harry Morgan. Stevenson played Colonel Henry Blake, but decided to leave the show during the third season and mostly appeared in a bunch of short-lived sitcoms after that. He was replaced by Morgan, who played Colonel Potter. They do share a couple of scenes together, and that alone is enough to provide some mild enjoyment. Sandy Duncan plays the main character Frank's love interest, and she also provides a few funny moments. Frank was played by Ken Berry, and while he does okay in the role, it's difficult not to find him basically a substitute Dean Jones. Jones appeared in quite a few Disney movies during this time, and it would not shock me if he was offered this role first. Every time Berry is on screen, it just feels like he's being directed to imitate Jones' physical comedy approach and acting style. A few years earlier, he'd even played a lead role in Herbie Rides Again, so he literally has filled in for Dean Jones. Nonetheless, everyone in the cast appears to understand what kind of movie this is and play their roles appropriately. However, the movie starts to lose me when the plot goes into a few wild detours. At some point, the film becomes basically uncut gems, as the lead characters partake in gambling, and we anxiously wait for that best payoff. This is a movie about a magical alien cat who we want to see do amazing things. Why is so much of the plot centered on sports gambling? Also, what a message to send to the children in the audience. If you meet someone who can make objects move around with their mind, you can use them to cheat at gambling and billiards games. We spend a significant amount of time on this, and I felt it dragged the story down. At some point, the Cat from Outer Space introduces an additional villain who of course wants the cat and his magical collar for his own evil deeds. Even though he's hinted at earlier through Roddy McDowall's character who secretly works for him, this still feels like an additional obstacle too many and results in the classic scenario of the love interest being kidnapped and having to be saved. I will say that leads to an impressive stunt involving airplane and helicopter, as Frank tries to save his girlfriend. It's almost like something you might see in one of the Mission Impossible movies, and it's easy to imagine a 16-year-old Tom Cruise sitting in the movie theater and telling himself, I want to do that one day. Although the sequence does wear out its welcome, and they really stretch it out. We're already past the 90-minute mark at this point. You don't need to prolong this climax. A lot of the characters primarily participate in obvious slapstick routines, most of which fall flat for me. This is something common in a lot of live-action Disney movies, and some execute the slapstick better than others. I don't normally bring up the print quality of a movie, but I have to say I was really impressed with how The Cat from Outer Space looked on Disney+. Unless it's a Mary Poppins or 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea or Old Yeller, Disney does not tend to give the best treatment to their pre-90s live-action movies. In fact, the original DVD release of The Cat from Outer Space was not even handled by Disney. They licensed it to Anchor Bay, which is something they did for some of their titles in the late 90s. The Cat from Outer Space also is yet to receive a Blu-ray, not even through Disney Movie Club. So it's not a movie they seem to give a lot of priority towards. And yet, someone at Disney seems to care enough to give it such a pristine and impressive restoration. As for the movie itself, while it has its occasional moments, and it presents mild enough entertainment, you still have to wade through a few bizarre subplots and underwhelming comedy bits. But I've definitely seen a lot worse from Disney during this era. Now, if you've seen The Cat from Outer Space, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for the request, Morgan.